Welcome to the Trader, a Traitors podcast. I'm Matthew, a writer and 100% Traitors superfan working in TV development. The Trader features deep dives into every episode of English-speaking versions of the show, as well as interviews with contestants and bonus episodes. This season of the podcast is dedicated to the Traitors US Season 3. Today, we are taking a detailed look at the reunion episode of Traitors US, and to help me do that is the person who just recorded the previous episode with me about an hour ago. It's surprise! I can't believe it's David Bloomberg.
Hey!
How
You're
have you
giving
been
away all
since
our you're giving away all our behind the scenes secrets here, you know?
since we last spoke? How have you been? What's changed?
Well, I had to get dressed up for the reunion here. This is about as dressed up as I get. So, I mean, this was about as dressed up as I got before I retired. So, had to dust off the old shirt with actual buttons on it and the collar. So, I don't have the fancy ball gown or anything like that.
I've
But
I've
yes,
dressed up too. I've got my
yes,
Trader hoodie on for this
yeah,
reunion special. So yes,
nice,
I made an effort.
nice. I was going to introduce myself, but if you're brand new and just tuning into the reunion, great. I mean, it's great that we're bringing it in.
Never know.
Find me everywhere. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it at the end of the podcast. But you can find me everywhere.
Yes. And for one time only, I am going to appease the small number of listeners who don't enjoy the Trade Our Traitor game so much. Boo to them. We're going to jump straight into the episode, mainly because hopefully it will give us a bit more time to discuss. We've got more questions from listeners, and David and I just recorded a 2 hour, 10 minute podcast episode for the finale. So it'd be nice to take this one a little easier. And also, I'm so bad at the game, I can't face another failure in one day. So let's just jump right to it, I guess. We start off with I still don't know why Alan Cumming doesn't just host these himself. Like we get these little VTs of him in his fancy AC cape, and he handily shares the initials AC with Andy Cohen. I mean, I don't know. Any thoughts? Why?
I,
Why?
I mean, maybe his fee is too high. Maybe I think it's because, quite frankly, Andy apparently does all these Bravo reunions.
Yeah.
And a little behind the scenes here, we were talking about this before. They want this to be like a housewife reunion or whatever other
Like Bachelor or
yeah. Well, I mean, Bachelor is different, obviously different. Yep. Well, is it in the NBC family? Maybe. I don't think Andy hosts those, but Vanderpump
Yeah, yeah,
apparently
yeah.
must have had these because Andy made a comment to Sandoval when he showed up. So they I am in favor of reunion shows. I'm glad they have it. I would love to see it for some of the others, like UK. I would love to, but not for the reason that Peacock is having this, because they just try to stir up drama like it's Housewives, and it's not Housewives. There are a lot of Housewives there, but it's not Housewives. And I think that's one spoiler alert for how I feel about this reunion. It's one failure of this reunion is they are trying to mold it to be something that it shouldn't be, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree with that. Well, we'll go through it step by step. Some
Mm-hmm.
bits I may skip right by, and you'll be able to tell how much my enjoyment sort of declined as the
Yes.
episode went on.
Yeah.
So once we see Alan for a brief moment, we've got Andy Cole, and he welcomes the winners first, and the others sit backstage in the drawing room. I thought that was a funny order to do things in. I thought normally, and maybe this is a UK thing. Normally we build up to the winners, and they are the ones who come out last. So
Yeah, but I think they wanted the winners out there. I mean, to have the most screen time. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
that part does make sense because we'll get to it later. But the people who came out last and whined about screen time, are the people I least wanted to see. So it makes sense to have them last.
Yeah.
Frankly, they could have left them out entirely.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed just talking to the winners and
Hmm.
like the traitors. I was kind of all I needed.
Yeah,
So Andy congratulates Dolores on being the first housewife winner and reminds her that
because
she voted incorrectly 8 out of 10 times.
yes, she did so much to earn that. Yes, Andy, she, oh, wow. Yes, he does admit that, but I don't know what he means incorrectly. Like, I didn't go back and check. Does he mean incorrectly as in not for the person who was banished, or does he mean incorrectly as in not for a traitor?
I think he means as in not for a traitor. I think
Okay.
only twice she actually voted for a traitor who was then banished, I think.
Well,
Uh
once was obviously Brittany.
yeah, and then must have been Bob the drag queen before that.
Might have been. Don't remember.
Um, yeah, he says he makes a joke. I thought you were savvy and good at sniffing people out, and she sort of admits, well, my she says her temper got the best of her. She talks a bit about Tom. She's like, oh, I just kept voting for Tom. She says something that I don't think makes sense, but I think I know what she was trying to say. She I know Dolores not making sense. What? Uh, she claims I just kept voting for Tom because he kept voting for me, and I was just mad. She says um he kept voting for me. I think what she means is he kept voting for me to stay in the game because the traitors would like that because it was creating a distraction. But she doesn't. She says something else that doesn't really make sense.
I
But
just thought it was, I mean, he did vote for her once or twice.
yeah,
I, yeah, I mean, she, as usual, she doesn't make much sense.
yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna move right on from that because they,
Yeah.
like many of the discussions in this reunion episode, they don't last very long. There's so many times I want them to dig a bit deeper.
Well, and I think it's because they're clipping. I mean, I feel like, and I haven't heard, but I feel like this probably was like 2 to 3 times longer.
Yeah,
And I mean, and we have heard from previous reunions that they are much longer. But it really does seem like these are just snippets, clip, 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 so they can keep moving it along.
yeah,
And like, yeah, I'll get to some things where I think they were cut ridiculously later, but it's yeah, you're like, okay, we're gonna get an answer. Nope, we're not.
yeah,
Oh, there it went. Okay.
yeah. Uh, Andy just sort of briefly introduces the other winners, jokes about with Gabby, he says, "Oh look, Ivor's actually in the room," and I sort of commends her on her instincts in the game, and she makes a joke about dating 26 men helps you sniff out the bullshit.
Yes.
uh, Ivor talks a bit about how he's had a very comfortable life. This was the biggest thing he's done outside of his comfort zone. He's very surprised he's here. We cut to Ayan saying she's also very surprised he's there. I think a lot
Hmm.
of people are probably surprised that Ivor is there.
Yeah, and I mean, I am saying that really, the woman who knew either equal to or less than what Ivar knew about the game, saying that
Yeah.
she's surprised he won, just be quiet.
Yeah, I think she probably just sees him as like a boring personality. I think
Right.
she thinks like, but I'm fabulous and exciting and funny.
Yes.
Why did I not get kept around?
Yes.
Even though that's completely not how the game works.
Right.
Um, and he does ask them why didn't anyone vote red at the end of the game? They just all immediately at the first chance voted to finish the game. Um, I wish this conversation had gone on a lot longer. Dylan says Brittany's intense defense. He became convinced that she was a traitor at that round
Hmm.
table. So I guess therefore he thought she was definitely the traitor and they'd got her out. And he says that when everyone else voted with him, like they all voted for Brittany at that last banishment, he felt like a sense of community with them. Like he couldn't screw them
Right.
over after that. And Gabby just sort of says, "Oh, at the end we just all really trusted each other."
Yeah.
End of conversation. There's no explanation of why.
Yeah, and I do think we discussed this way back in the finale podcast. I think it's more than that. That he didn't want to risk it, Dylan, because he could have easily been the next target.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I think it's probably his persona, and I'm sure he seems like a very, very nice guy, but
Hmm.
that his deliberate, I think he sort of deliberately portraying that and is very aware that he's seen
Right.
as the nice guy that everybody loves. So he'll stick to just saying, I just love everyone and I just trust everyone and they had my back. He's not going to
Right.
come out with some sort of cynical game plan and like, well, you know
Yeah.
what, I was screwed and I had to. Uh, Next up then, the OG traitors are invited out. Bob the Drag Queen, Carolyn, Danielle, and Boston Rob. Uh, and I guess Andy Cohen is so associated with the Housewives franchise. He asks them, what the F are you doing killing all the housewives at the start?
Yeah.
Um,
And we don't get an answer.
yeah,
I
they
mean,
just
we
all sort
get,
of laugh.
yeah, I mean, they get a laugh, and then Bob says something about hands being covered in blood. And then this is one of those clips I was talking about where we don't get an answer.
Yeah,
I'm sure this conversation continued, but that was all we got was the joke and moving on.
yeah.
And my thing is, well, here, you could stop that. Stop sending all the housewives in, and they won't get murdered off, Just stop
Yeah.
it. I know we're not going to because this is Peacock, but I did think it was interesting, funny, that they had Danielle and Bob on one couch and Rob and Carolyn on the other, which makes it easier when Bob and Rob square off and Bob and Carolyn square off and Danielle and Carolyn square off later on. So they knew what they were doing when at
Yeah.
least they were placing the couches.
Yes, absolutely. I thought so too. Uh, we've got, I mean, most of my comments are again they're just sort of brief things. There's not much to get into. Carolyn
Mm-hmm.
says that she manifested being a traitor by sleeping in a cloak before the game, so she really wanted to play that part. She didn't want to be a faithful.
But this was another thing. I would swear, didn't she say that on the show itself?
I don't remember. Maybe.
I would swear that she said that um and to Alan at
Yeah.
one point. And
Okay.
like Andy's like, "Well, I heard that as if it came from somewhere else." And it's like,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that was on the show.
Okay. Um. Yeah. Maybe she said it when Alan was like choosing the traitors in the first place, and he was interviewing everybody, perhaps. We get a montage next. It's basically Danielle versus Carolyn throughout the season. They do a few montages in this episode. Um, Danielle talks about being a traitor with Carolyn. She says it was an organized chaos with Carolyn. And Carolyn says, well, I thought it was going well in the beginning. And I mean, it probably was for a couple of episodes. And then it just went, they just all turned on each other.
Yeah.
And Danielle says she thought that Carolyn and Rob were working together, so she had to then just on them and take them out. I don't know if I believe that,
I mean,
if she
she
even
said it
thinks that.
I mean, she said a couple things. She did say at one point on the show, she thinks they're working together as survivor people, but she also said she can't rely on Carolyn.
Mhm.
She made it sound like she couldn't rely on her because she was too uh, inconsistent, I guess,
Mm.
to rely on her. But she did at one point also say she thought they were working together. And so she was going for Carolyn. This whole thing she said here about going to Carolyn to weaken Rob. And it's like, but you never gave Carolyn a chance. It still
Yeah.
goes back to you never gave Carolyn a chance to find out what the real situation was. She predetermined that was what was happening. The one thing that was good about this conversation, I thought they were both pretty polite in talking
Mhm.
about their fights. There was no real drama there, thankfully. I didn't, I know a lot of people tune into these to see people fighting. And we'll see some people fighting later, and it's really cringy. These, I think it was nice to see them giving their points of view without trying to turn it into something it wasn't.
Yeah, especially, Andy asks um, Carolyn if she thinks Danielle respected her, and she gets a bit upset, and she's saying, "No, I don't." But Danielle, at least, she tries to be positive, and she says, "Look, I think you're smart. I think you played a good game. People do listen to you." And then Gabby jumps into Carolyn's defense, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're not like throwing shoes at each other.
I mean, this is your opportunity to bring back the Carolyn impression. Come on.
Oh, oh yeah,
You can do Carolyn and Gabby both.
I could do them both at the same time. I'll save it. I'll save it.
Okay.
Um,
I mean,
Uh,
yeah, Carolyn said without an impression, she was very aware that her persona is part of her strategy. And that's true. But she said, the side eyes and other reactions from others still hurt her, even if it helps in the game. And she didn't think Danielle respected her. And, Danielle says, oh, they had a communication issue, but she was impressed with her game and she was smart. I I understand what Carolyn is saying. I also understand some of the people who criticize Carolyn because you're saying your personality is part of your strategy, but then you're upset when people say things or act in a way that will help your strategy but hurt you personally.
yeah,
And it's like, I understand what she's saying, that it does hurt. It's a weird situation because there aren't that many people that we've seen whose personalities are so integrated with their game like that. And
yeah,
so it's understandable, but I also get why some people criticize her for saying that.
yeah,
But as I've noted before, Carolyn is, if she plays in future games of any type, she's going to have to come up with a new plan because she can't rely on the persona anymore unless she's playing with people who truly have never seen her in a game.
yeah, yeah. The next sort of big section is Bob versus Bob the drag queen. Just before that, Dolores also tells Carolyn that she's loved. She congratulates her for being number 7 in the world on Cameo. That's quite impressive.
Yeah, if I had said that, you'd have thought it was my lie.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't check it myself. I see posts about Cameo occasionally, less so now that I'm not on Twitter. But I see it occasionally. I thought that was among reality people, but maybe it
Hmm.
is about among everybody. I mean, yeah, Carolyn. A lot of people love Carolyn. It is,
Yeah,
and a lot of people would love to get a cameo from her.
yeah. And even if it is amongst reality contestants, it's still
Yeah,
pretty
right.
impressive. If anyone wants a much cheaper version, just contact me and I'll put a wig on and I'll pretend to be Carolyn for you, and we'll work something out. So yeah, Bob versus Bob the drag queen. No, Rob versus. Oh,
Rob.
see, this is
Yes.
Rob
Hmm.
versus Bob the
This
drag
is
queen.
this again. Yes.
um, they talk a bit about this sort of what seems to be a pivotal moment for Rob, at least, when during the mission with the big heads that they had to carry up the
Hmm.
hill, Bob suggested in front of everybody, hey, one of the cage boys is probably a traitor. And this is what made Boston Rob so annoyed and made him decide he has to come after Bob the drag queen. Bob the drag queen says, I don't even remember that. It says, and Danielle and Bob both say, well, it didn't even have any impact anyway.
Right.
And Bob's like, no, but it hurt. Rob says it hurt me internally. I mean,
I mean,
I
Rob admits it wasn't that impactful, but yes,
yeah,
he says, it hurt me, and I acted on it. I felt like it was coming at me, so I acted on it. And I mean, that's something he does. If he thinks he's a target, then he's going to do that.
yeah,
And as they go back and forth, Bob notes he was a dominating force, and that's why Rob wanted him out. And I agree. That is another reason Rob wanted him out. It was two things. There was the more obvious reason of Bob somewhat pointing a finger in Rob's direction, but also that, they, I think they say here, Rob, if Rob sees a car, he wants to drive it,
yeah.
and Bob is Bob, as he said. He would be loud if he were the director. He would be loud if he were craft services.
Yeah. There must have been some sort of claim online that Rob's made or in an interview where he claims he said he didn't start the traitors turning on one another because he's challenged on that. And he now admits, okay, yes, it was me. I did start the traitors turning on one another. And Bob the drag queen says, well, you all turned on me. It wasn't just Rob.
Yeah.
Uh, Bob talks. Oh my goodness, I keep mixing these up. No, it is Bob. It is Bob. I was right this time. Bob the drag queen says that they can't. You've said this already. They could never be quiet. They'd be loud, whatever part they were
Hmm.
playing in the game. And then I think you were going to mention this. Rob admits. he doesn't know for sure that he would have split the money at the very end,
Right.
even if he had got there with Carolyn.
Yeah, I think Carolyn asks him, and he's like, I don't know. But then the funny part is Carolyn's like, yeah, I wouldn't have. She so but then Rob also admits he didn't need to come at Bob so quickly. And Gabby's like, oh, he doesn't care. He won in his own heart.
Yeah.
And he says, yes, and in my mother's heart. And I'm thinking, yes, and in your wallet, because you probably got tens of thousands of dollars to appear there.
Yeah. And you got to leave early.
Right. Right.
Uh, Andy asks, what I actually thought this was an interesting point. He says, why would anyone, Boston Rob, keep you in a game now? If you ever appeared on another show like Traitors,
Right.
Survivor, whatever, won't everyone just want to eliminate you? And they just sort of laugh and joke about it. They don't really say much, but it did sort of make me think, yeah, this proves a problem with the casting on these shows. And I think we've talked about it, that when you have big players like Rob, they probably are instantly vulnerable. It's not a
Yeah.
level playing field going in. So
I mean,
that
they
doesn't
do say a
happen when
few.
nobody knows each other.
Yeah, they say a few things because Rob has said in interviews before, if you see me on a game, you should get rid of me right away.
Yeah.
But now he's like backtracking on that, like, well, maybe, because he knows maybe I'll be playing another game at some point. And so, but the funny part is where he says, my people are my people and I will take them far. And then other people are like, yeah, but not to win. You're still going to knock them out. And the funny part is that Dylan had been watching Deal or No Deal Island on the flight over.
Yeah.
So he knew, not even knowing Rob was going to be in the game, he knew how Rob would bring someone naive to the end and turn on them. And so, yeah, I mean, that's clearly in the Traitors, that's the way you should do it anyway. But especially here, yeah, he will get you far. You just have to turn on him before he turns on you.
Yeah. And Rob even he just sort of he doesn't even deny it when they talk
Yeah.
about Dylan. He's just like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Rob, I enjoyed overall in this. I enjoyed Rob maybe the most of anyone because he was forthright, he was
Mm,
funny, he didn't stir up drama. Like there were a few things that were clearly aimed at stirring up drama with him, and he was like, "Yeah, that's what I did."
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I probably went after Bob too soon. He wasn't there to fight. He was just there to have some fun and relax. And so I enjoyed him probably the most of everyone there.
Yeah. That's I would probably agree with that. And I mean I'll get to I like Bob the Drag Queen,
Yes.
and this could just be all in the edit, but Bob is used to being the center of attention and
Yes.
hosting events and commanding the room and being a winner of Drag Race. Like, so Bob eats up a lot of screen time here, considering that Bob the Drag Queen left, episode like 4 or something. So even as a fan of Bob, I found it a little bit tiresome.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. I, I do think they, yes, took up a lot of the screen time here, but also I agreed with a lot of what Bob will say,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we'll get to later.
yeah. There's a little bit of focus on Danielle being a messy traitor, and she just sort of admits that yes, she was a messy traitor.
Well, I think
She,
she said she put it in her Twitter bio, or somebody else said
yeah,
that. Yeah.
and here's where she talks about Dolores, how she swore on her grandkids because she knew that. I think Dolores had done something similar, so she knew that this would convince her that she was a faithful. She said she even did it several times. And yeah, there's not much questioning of that. This is also the part where she says, the money isn't life changing, but it would have made a big impact for my family.
Yeah. I
And I thought
mean,
that was interesting.
I yeah, and I like that she brought it up and she was like, well, it's going to come up anyway because she's heard people. I'm just going to say it, whining about it. She's heard other players whine about it in interviews. I have seen people whine about it in my video comments on social media. Oh my God, she swore on her grandkids. Yeah, so the hell what? I don't care. Swear on anything you want. It's a game.
Yeah.
And some, oh, it's so terrible that goes beyond the game. No, it doesn't. There have been people in the past, Tony, who we barely hear from, but Tony, swore up and down on his family. He had plans like I think it was him, like I think he had brought a fake wedding ring to give to someone and hold and say like this is my wedding ring. If I lie to you and vote you out, you could throw it in the ocean or something like that. I think it was him who did that. I could be mistaken, but it sounds like a very Tony thing to do.
Mm.
You know what? Swear on whoever you want. Like she said, it is a game. She was there for the money. And yeah, it's not life changing money. But I mean, there aren't many prizes these days that are life changing. The
Yeah.
prize on Deal or No Deal Island, that could be life changing. The prize on the Beast Games, that could be life changing. I mean, it was $10 million. So yeah, unless you're already a multimillionaire, it's life changing. Winning even the full amount, $200,000, it could change some people's lives for sure. Was it going to change hers? She is, I don't know exactly how old she is. I think she's close to my age. She has grandkids. I don't. So would it change her life? No. Could it help her put aside money for her grandkids' college funds? Yeah. Would that be very important? Yeah. So more important to her than certainly to Lord Ivar
Yeah.
or to Dorinda, who we looked up and saw had $10 million, or to Nikki, who I looked up and saw had $8 million. But you're there for the money. You're there to win. And then Gabby said something else. She tried to imitate a dollar sign emoji, which
Yeah. She
was
goes,
funny as,
damn.
yeah. And so you're going to do what you need to do. And if that means swearing on your grandkids, then you swear on your grandkids. And anyone who wants to whine about it can shove off.
Yes. I think if
Sorry,
I was a
once
traitor,
again, holding back there. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. Typical you. Uh,
Yeah.
if I was a traitor, I would say whatever it took to convince
Mm-hmm.
people. It wouldn't bother my conscience. Um, because it's a game. Uh, we've got a couple of little things. Andy asking Carolyn why she didn't let Danielle recruit
This
Brittany,
this
and
was such a dumb question. Why
yeah,
are
it was kind
this
of
was on the
obvious.
this was fully explained on the show.
Yeah,
Why are you taking up our time, our screen time with this? The only thing that came out of it was Danielle admitted she broke Carolyn's trust and couldn't get it back. But okay, it wasn't. It's like this reunion was made for people who hadn't watched the show or something.
yeah, it was a bit. It would. Carolyn was not going to answer something different to that we've not already heard.
Right.
Kind of, there was not really anywhere for that conversation to go other than them to say yes, you would, no, you wouldn't, yes, I would have, no, you wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did
Yeah.
seem like a dumb question.
And then just looking ahead when they do the clips from previously, they did some clips of people. I mean, in my rewatch, I just fast forwarded through it because it was like, why am I even watching this again? We've seen it. Why do we have to? This is a reunion. This isn't a recap.
Yeah. I mean, if it was like funny outtakes or like extra
Right.
scenes, I'd watch them. But yeah, I don't
Yeah.
need all the montages. But like we've just watched the season. We know
Right.
how it went. Next up, Brittany comes out. So we're going to focus on her for a while. Andy immediately goes in on Brittany about betraying
Oh, the
Danielle
claws
once
come
again.
out. Yes.
um, Brittany claims now that she thought that Danielle might just end up betraying her in the end game to sort of get revenge, basically. She's like, that would have been the perfect story for Danielle to take me all the way to the end and then do to me what I did to her.
Yeah. I
First
didn't.
first time I've heard her say that.
I didn't really get that out of it. Her answers here were confusing. I felt. Um, I could see that. I didn't get that out of what she said,
Okay.
but I could see getting that out of what she said. I may have been viewing it in the lens of what I thought she was already going to say. Um, so yeah, it was her answers were kind of all over the place.
Yeah. Um, I think it's not even Andy, it's Bob the drag queen asks, um, wants to find out, why did you vote for Danielle
Yeah.
at that last roundtable. So it turns to Dolores and say, "Were you giving her these eye signals? Were you
Hmm.
implying you were going to vote for Danielle?" Dolores just says, "No, I didn't do that." And some of the others are like, "But we saw you do it." And she's just like, "No, I wasn't doing that." So I don't know what she was doing. Maybe she
I
meant
mean,
something else. Like,
or she might. I mean, she might have just been looking around the room.
yeah,
Who knows what was interpreted there. Uh, mark this down: the one and only time I will side with Dolores. I don't think she was giving a deliberate signal because I don't think it's in her brain to give a deliberate signal. That's suggesting she has some sort of strategic ability, which she does not have. Um,
and she clearly wasn't doing it anyway because she didn't vote for Danielle,
right.
and she would have no reason to try and pretend to Brittany that's what she was going to do.
I think
Like,
she was
she just,
probably just looking around the room, like, what do I do type of thing.
yeah,
And yeah, but meanwhile, Bob brings up reindeer games and, Brittany tries to go back at him. And what did she say? He,
yeah. I've
oh, he
just
said,
said that he
okay,
gives her the hard,
Tamar or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
And I can't, I know of Tamar, but I don't know why he was calling her that
yeah.
specifically. Um, and then, you know, it got very personal when it didn't seem like it should have been personal between Bob and Brittany.
Yeah, I thought the same. I noted that Bob is giving Brittany a hard time, and I just wrote, "Calm down, Bob." Like this is an
Yeah,
example of Bob. This isn't your moment, so you don't need. And but it's so deliberate. I think the way that they placed Bob
right.
was kind of right up close to Andy by the looks of it. They want, they know that Bob's good TV, so they
Yeah,
probably were like, "Let's get Bob to say as much as possible.
right.
Get that in the re." I get it.
Yeah. And then, Danielle started talking about the situation, and there was a lot of interrupting between Danielle and Brittany, and interrupting to say don't interrupt, and interrupting to say don't interrupt when I'm interrupting. Um, but Brittany was right, and she had a good point because she's been listening to this for literally months now, people talking about it like they've been lifelong friends. And
Yeah,
she's like, I spent a grand total of 3 hours with Danielle prior to that. And so I'm sure from Brittany's point of view, she's been aching to say this for all this time. So, yes, when Danielle starts again, it just all comes out. Even if it's interrupting her, it all comes out. Like, we weren't friends, we got to know each other on reindeer games. We knew each other a bit from before that, but that was it.
yeah. I think that married up with what I my perception was throughout the season, especially the second half,
Mhm.
was like the connection between those two. I couldn't understand why it was suddenly so strong, but maybe it was because Danielle wanted us to see it that way, but that wasn't actually the case.
I think it was. I think that in these games you form that, we've seen it before. You're with someone for one day and they're like, "Oh,
Hmm.
I love you all."
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and I think that they hung out with each other and they shared a bond from the previous show,
yeah,
even the way it went. So I understand it happening in the house. Um, but it's not like they'd been lifelong friends before that.
yeah,
And Brittany said she didn't want it to happen this way and didn't want to make the choice and was heartbroken. I believe all of that. And again, I said this in the finale podcast. People who say she turned on Danielle again. No, she didn't turn on her. She made a terrible, illogical game move based on a false read that wrecked both of their games.
yeah. Yeah, I do believe she thought that she and Danielle could get to the end when she was recruited. Yeah, her flip at the round table was just that. It was
Mm-hmm.
a flip suddenly because,
Right.
rightly or wrongly, she thought it would protect her going forward.
Yeah, it wasn't like she was like, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, plot with Danielle, get it to be a tie, and then flip on her and
Yeah,
screw her.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. They did not know that that tie was going to happen. She didn't
Right,
vote for Danielle first time round, even though eyes were on Danielle. She stuck with
right.
voting for Ivar at first. Um, Danielle talks. I didn't make many notes because I thought it was a little kind of rambling. She talks about being pro woman. And I thought she wasn't very pro-women when she ditched Carolyn. Um, Brittany talks about being, yeah, she said she was forced into that position. We've covered this.
Right.
Um, but seconds later, Danielle does admit that she's a hypocrite because she did the exact same thing to Bob.
Well, she said she would, if she were mad at Brittany for a game move, it would be hypocritical. And I like to see that.
Hmm.
So many of these people, especially the non-gamers, but so many of these people come in and they're like, "Oh, what you did was terrible," and people are like, "But you did it too." Well, that's different.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that Danielle could say, "Well, I'm not mad at her for a game move."
Yeah.
Um, but then she carries it on and says, "However, if we play together again, I'm not going to come after you. I just know I can't trust you, and it's not personal. I just know I can't trust you." Which, yeah, that's the takeaway I would have from Danielle too,
Yeah.
if I were Danielle too, because again, Brittany made a terrible game. And, I should have maybe said this more on the finale podcast. I still really like Brittany. She just made a terrible move and destroyed her game and Danielle's. And so, I'm sure that in various places people will be like, he's a hater. No, I like Danielle. I like Brittany. I understand both of their points of view in this situation in terms of in the future if they end up in a game together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't trust Brittany to do the right thing either because she has shown that she sometimes makes poor decisions.
Yeah. When Danielle said this about not she's never going to play a game again with Brittany, it did give me this fleeting vision of, maybe US season 4, Danielle and Brittany will become the new Parvati and Kate Chastain, and they'll bring them back to battle it out again, or maybe just for a little cameo. Uh, maybe not. Maybe they would not agree to that.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Somehow I doubt it,
Yes.
but um, yeah, and I'm trying to think back also to reindeer games. I feel like what Brittany did there was also not someone I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like it wasn't targeting Danielle. It was a stupid game move
Hmm.
there as well
Okay.
that Danielle paid for. And so, that's where the, continuing issue comes in. It's like, well, you can't rely on Brittany, not necessarily because she's going to stab you in the back, but she's going to make bad moves.
Yeah. I feel like I need to head to YouTube and watch a sort of reindeer games in 5 minutes recap. So that I mean, I really should have done that before this season.
Yeah,
Weird that I'm doing it now, but hey, never too late.
right.
Uh, we've got just a couple more bits on Danielle. She claims that she never attacked a faithful at the round table. Cut to Gabby saying, "You attacked me." That Danielle says, "No, that's because you were coming for me. It was just defense." And Andy then asks about this cheating claim that I think we might have mentioned on the podcast. Maybe it
Yeah.
was off air. Um, there's been chatter online that Danielle cheated by telling Brittany explicitly before the recruitment that she was a
Mm-hmm.
traitor. Both she and Brittany just they refute this. They're like, no, that absolutely didn't happen. Brittany says, no, it's because I said things like I knew 100% Danielle was a
Right.
traitor. But she's like, that was just an exaggeration. It wasn't literal. I didn't actually know. So yeah, there's no, well, never know,
Yeah.
but they both just are like, no, no, didn't cheat. That didn't
Well,
happen.
here's the thing people were saying, now, whether this is because of the telephone game or not, people were saying Brittany said on her podcast that Danielle told her. Okay, if that actually happened, there would be definitive proof. You wouldn't have it as a,
Mm,
she said situation. There would be a clip circulating.
yeah,
So someone out there is just plain lying. Yes, it was an extrapolation, and maybe it started that way, but other people are just plain lying when they say, "Oh, I saw that she said this." No, you didn't, because it didn't happen. And if anyone says otherwise, then fine. Provide the clip. We'll spread it across the internet and prove that Brittany and Danielle were both wrong and that Peacock was wrong to even air this. So
yeah,
yeah, I definitely I said at the time it was ridiculous, and it is. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and Danielle mentions, well, the Apple signed NDAs. She takes them really
Right.
seriously. Whether she takes them seriously or not, they are real. So you're right. If there was a podcast of Britney saying, "Yeah, she cheated and told me she was a traitor,"
Right.
Studio Lambert and NBC would be all over that. Danielle wouldn't even be on this reunion. She wouldn't receive any prize money, I'm sure.
And she'd probably already have a lawsuit in her hands. And
Yeah.
while winning 200,000 might not have impacted her financially and been life changing, being sued for probably $10 million or whatever they sue for these days, that would have.
Yeah, yeah. Next up, we've got some more faithful who come out and join everybody. We've got Derek, Wes, Tom, Nikki, and Chriselle. This is sort of the last batch of people that I moderately am interested in. Um,
Well, even there, my note is I don't really care. Sorry.
the joke about the joke you mentioned this, the joke around about Tom being nervous at reunions. It's obviously a reference to Vanderpump Rules and
Mm-hmm.
Andy Cohen being there. Andy reads a social media post about Tom, a couple of posts, I think, about Tom redeeming himself. And I guess this is why he probably went on the show. He wants to save his public image and turn things around.
Yeah, but meanwhile, just I swear last week there was a news story that was again negative about him, and it was just like, you dummy. It was something
Oh,
about
Tom.
posting pictures or something of a girlfriend. I don't know.
Okay.
Someone else can search that out, but it was just like, Tom.
Yeah. Oh dear, Tom. We get a flashback to his funny backwards singing. Okay, fine. Chriselle talks a bit about regretting voting out Nikki so early on, says it ruined her confidence in the game. I barely remember that, to be honest. It's not. Well, I do remember it, but
Yeah,
it's not really the biggest talking point in the game, surely. Like, they're
for
not.
them it was.
Yeah. Um, Brittany wanted to. She says she wanted to join the Bambi Alliance, but it was too exclusive. And Gabby's saying, "No, that's not true. The Bambis is for everyone. Even Wes was a Bambi." We've got a Rob also talks about voting out Nikki. Says that it wasn't really his plan. Again, I don't care that much about Nikki
Yeah,
getting banished. We've got a VT of Wes, his exit, his utterly condescending goodbye speech, where he calls them all chess pieces and tells them he doesn't care about any of them. He describes himself as a bitter ass bitch, and that's how he stayed on TV for 20 years.
he's right. You don't. Well, maybe Dolores is proof the other way, but you don't stay on TV for all these years by being boring.
Yeah,
Now, whatever she did on Housewives, because there was something that she told Ivar that she, in that one interview that I saw, that she called another housewife all sorts of names that were, he said would have been bleeped out in the UK. That, you know, so I don't know. Maybe she has a different personality, or maybe she had a different personality, and it's been years. I don't know if Housewives of New Jersey is still going on. I don't know if she's still there. I really don't. But you don't get invited to these shows if they think you're going to be boring.
yeah,
Now you may end up being boring, but not if they don't. If they think you're going to be boring, they're not going to bother inviting you. So yes, he is correct that is how he has. I said before this was the TV season of Wes. He was on 3 shows, with a couple of them overlapping.
yeah. I think the ultimate example of what you just mentioned, being invited because they think you're not going to be
Mhm.
boring, is well the opposite. The exemption to that maybe is like Sam is a great example of that. Like probably brought on because he's Britney Spears' ex-husband, and
Mhm.
that'll get people interested. But even in this reunion, he says one thing. It's really like banal. He just I just don't know what he.
Yeah,
There were a
they
couple of
ask him.
things he
Yeah.
started to catch on to people towards the end. He had one or two moments, but
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
that's a failure in their casting when they thought that he was going to be more interesting, I think.
yeah, he's just like a big
Um,
handsome model who doesn't need to. have a sparkling personality to be famous. He looks
I
great.
mean, if they wanted a big handsome model, they could have invited me on,
Well, exactly. So season four.
Yeah.
So yes, we've got Wes. He talks a bit about this sort of silly interaction between him and Rob. He's saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
you take the title of the GOAT now." He does talk about the winners. He praises their courage for voting together at the end, and he says he would have been slitting throats left and right.
Yeah.
And sort of think, yeah, I wouldn't have put it like that, but yes, Wes, I probably would have also continued to
Yeah.
vote. There's some just like silly moments. Bob saying that Zac Efron isn't a good actor.
Hmm.
He christens Dylan misguided, and Tom says it's a lot more to it than you think. Meaning like drag's really hard, and Zach's
Yeah.
like not Zach. I'm calling him Zach now.
Yeah.
Dylan says, oh yeah, of course you've done drag before.
Yeah.
Kind of like inconsequential. It's just like not what I came to the reunion for. It's just
Right.
all a bit fluffy.
Yeah.
Next up is the Gone Too Soon faithful, aka the players no one remembers.
Yes.
It's and for me, the reunion. I made a note here. It truly just goes downhill from this point. They should have had a 30-minute reunion where they just talked about the important stuff, and ditched half of this silliness.
Yes, but then they get complaints. I mean, Survivor for like one season back when switched to not having the pre-jury people on, and there were a lot of complaints about that.
Oh,
And
okay.
now, since they've switched to having the quote unquote reunion right after the show, still in Fiji, um, they only have the post jury people there,
Mm.
and there's a lot of complaints about that
Oh,
too.
okay.
But in this case, I'd have been okay with it because, yeah, I mean, I had forgotten about Robin. Like literally the first time I watched it, I didn't even notice her. Even though she spoke, I did not remember that she had spoken until I saw it the second time. Um, Wells. Who the hell is Wells? I still don't
Oh,
remember
I
Wells.
still don't. I
I
don't either.
I don't know who he was. I don't care about who he was. I, you know, Dorinda. The only reason I remember her is because we talked about her being worth $10 million last week. There's, I mean, I said last week I didn't remember her. I will go back to not remembering her, and so yeah, it's and then she just this was probably the worst part of the reunion here because she decided I didn't get any screen time on the show, so I'm going to get it now. So she accuses Bob of being negative to her after the fact to get airtime.
Yeah, after the fact has becomes her favorite phrase here. She says it about 10
Yes.
times.
And no, this is just you trying to get airtime now. You're trying to create drama. And it worked because this is Bravo. And I didn't care. I care even less now. Her behavior made me care even less than that. There are no lower numbers to go to at this point. She is in the negatives. And and then Ian jumped in, and I had liked Ian in the very brief time we saw her, but she jumped in to try to get her own screen time and accused
Yeah.
Bob of going after her because she was the funniest person in the house and was going to get more camera time. And, even does the, oh, you here thought that I was funny. And then Bob's like, okay, the same people are going to raise their hand for me, and, and this was from the woman who literally didn't know what game she was playing. She was only there for the camera time. She wanted more. She got upset that she couldn't wear all her dresses. And Bob, I think, was, right to shoot back. Okay, call me when you have two comedy specials.
Yeah. Yeah, it says I'll be the first to watch.
So
Yeah.
those two just really annoyed me. It sucked all the air out of whatever air there had been there.
Yeah, and yeah, I felt the same really. Like Dorinda, and I don't mind a bit of drama and oh,
Mm-hmm.
there's a confrontation, but because I don't really remember Dorinda, I kind of just didn't care about this argument.
Yeah,
Like you in one episode, like okay, okay, you're annoyed at Bob's comments. Who cares? I don't think Bob
right.
cared. Bob was like, you don't know me, I
No,
don't know you.
I'm sure Bob didn't. Well, that was the other thing too. Was she kept saying, she kept getting offended that Bob didn't know who she was and kept trying to turn it around by saying, well, I don't know who you are. He doesn't care. His life is fine. She is the one who this hurts deeply. Like, everyone must know who I am.
Yeah.
I mean, she literally seemed offended. He wasn't saying it as an insult. Like, I don't even know you. I'm saying it as an insult. I don't even know you and I don't want to know you. But he was just saying, I came in here and I didn't know who you were. It was
Yeah.
just a statement of fact. She's trying to turn it into something that it wasn't. And, I mean, same thing with Wells. Talk eventually turned to him, and Bob said the same thing. I don't know who he was. I already said it. I don't either. I don't care. He could show up on another show. I wouldn't even remember that he had been on this one.
Yeah. Same here. And to quote to quote Gabby, same.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Dorinda's background, I guess, is being in a housewife show where you gain screen time by having arguments with people and pretending you're upset about things more than you actually are. And they probably wanted her to do this and thought it made exciting TV. I think most people that watch the trailers actually don't care about this stuff, though. Uh, the
Yeah.
next the next montage is all about it's this sort of fake. Welcome to Scotland. Here's how great it is in the castle. Come and stay. Voiceover
Yeah.
from Alan. Bob the drag queen is very rude and says 10 out of 10 don't recommend. Outraged. Bob, I'm not no longer a fan. Um,
He
and
doesn't even know who you are.
he doesn't even know who I am. Um, I want screen time. Another social media question comes in from Andy about Bob killing off the housewives, and I'm like, we've already covered this. Like, you talked about this at the start. Why are we doing it
Yeah.
again? Wells and Ian again. Who's Wells? They're besties now. But I'm now just sort of running through the 20-second segments. Bob
Right.
H says Rob is the worst dressed. Who cares? Sierra tells
He
Rob,
wasn't even wearing his baseball cap. Come on. He dressed up.
yes, he was. Yeah, he had a suit on. Sierra tells Rob that he was hot, and they all laugh. Tony and Jeremy air their irritations about Rob and Bob the drag queen. Again, I've kind of forgotten who they even are.
I mean, I
Uh,
obviously know them and,
yeah,
but, yeah, there wasn't much for them to say here other than, you know, again, this is where the difference is between the gamers and the housewives. Tony's like, well, yeah, here's why I said that, and and Jeremy's like, I'm over it. I'm a gamer,
yeah.
and so if this had happened to one of the housewives, they'd have been like, oh my gosh, it was the worst thing ever.
Yeah, yeah. They talk about Tom's comment at the round table when he said that women are better cheaters, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sort of like, yeah, that was a funny moment. Tom's probably been asked about this in a million other interviews
Right.
now, and I made a note here to myself to say this is truly a Bravo reunion. This is not a Traitors reunion.
Yeah.
There's a montage of the faithful being completely wrong about their suspects throughout the game, and yeah, like it's quite funny, but well, big deal. Like anyone who plays the game is gonna get things wrong. Like no faithful ever goes in and figures out who the traitors are perfectly and doesn't have wrong suspects. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, it's funny seeing them saying like, I completely trust Danielle 100%. She's definitely a faithful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Bob the drag queen praises Derek for being a really good detective, putting a case together about Boston Rob. Okay, fine. And Bob gives a new drag name to Tom called Shanida Clue. Uh, okay.
And then Tom tries to squeeze in, I guess, the drag name he had used, and it was something. Yeah, I don't even remember
Yeah,
what
I
it
can't
was, but
remember. We've got Derek and Bob H asking Dylan about, and I thought this was actually one of the more could have been important moments. I wanted more of it. They asked Dylan about being in Boston Rob's pocket and
mm-hmm.
not voting for him and saying, and Derek's like, after I told you what was going to happen, I told you I would get murdered and that Rob would try and say he was framed. Did you not realize that's exactly what was happening? And Dylan is just Dylan. He just sort of smiles and is a bit shy and says,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh," he says, "I didn't want to vote out Rob." He doesn't take any. I still don't know if he means, yeah, it was a strategy. I kind of knew he was a traitor, or if he was blind and was like, "Oh yeah, I just was
Yeah,
friends with him." I'm
yeah.
no clearer on the truth. So
Yep. Yeah, I don't know either. That was another thing that annoyed me. It's like, okay, I guess we'll have to scour for interviews to see if he ever directly answers it. But considering he wouldn't answer it here, I bet he dodges the question everywhere else too.
Yeah. Or maybe he did and it's been cut out. Actually, we've got a listener question sort of related to this. So that's a good point to come back to. Andy asks Sam and Tom about this trap that Sam had created. Like, there's sort of one interesting moment that Sam had on the show. The trap after the murder in plain sight night at breakfast, he thought, I'll test the people who come back by asking them what was Alan wearing because he reckoned the traitors wouldn't know what Alan was wearing.
Yeah, but
And
even then, Andy asks some stupid question like, "How did you come up with this?" And it's
yeah,
like,
it's like, well, yeah,
Andy,
so
did you watch the show?
yeah,
Because it was pretty clear how he came up with it on the show.
yeah, and all Sam, I didn't even write it down because it was just like Sam saying, "Yes, I thought about how the traitors
Right.
wouldn't have seen." Like he just like repeats it. Like there's no insight there. Like it was
Yeah.
obvious. Um, Tom, yeah, I guess Andy Cohen's like acting like, "Oh my God, you're a genius." Like it was clever, but
It was,
we
yeah, it
get
was
it.
good.
We've seen the
But
show. We get it.
right, right. And then, Sandoval's like, well, they kept, trying to pin him down for why he screwed it up. And he's like, well, I just presumed that Alan would have had to meet with the traitors too. And, and then Carolyn says what we had found out previously from an interview, which is no, actually, he didn't.
Yeah.
And as I said before, I agree with Tom's logic that, of course, production would have had Alan meet with any traders that were involved just to keep things consistent. Of
Mm.
course they would do that, except they didn't.
They
And that
didn't.
was a huge mistake on production's part. If Carolyn had lost because production screwed up like this, that would have really pissed me off.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'd have been annoyed. It would have felt unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm going to skip a couple of really trivial things and get straight to another trivial thing. Just a trivial thing that gets a little bit more time. Apart from Britney's headband and Gabby doing a Jennifer Coolidge impression, they have this fakey award, Best Performance in a Scottish Castle. The
Oh,
nominees are
yes. Which was more
Carolyn,
clips.
just filling time. Carolyn stumbling it over the Tom thing at breakfast. This next one wasn't even a thing. It's Brittany, Brittany and the red herring at the round table, and all it was the fact that Brittany didn't accuse Gabby of being a traitor after she became the seer. Like that's not of all the
I
things you could have chosen in this show.
Yeah.
Boston Rob promising Carolyn and Danielle he'll never come for them. Okay, right. Big deal. And then Bob the Drag Queen's roundtable speech. Like, at least I thought, oh yeah, that was a big moment. I remember
Yeah.
that, even though that was 6 or 7 episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that was a big loud moment, sure. And then the last nominee was just Danielle in general, crying all the time, being crazy.
Yeah.
She wins. She thanks God. She pretends to cry. My next note is just this is so dumb. They applaud Danielle's performance, and she says that she was performing even when the cameras weren't rolling, so it was exhausting. Um, I wonder what you think of this. Andy congratulates Danielle. I think he's reading a social media comment and he says, "Hey, someone says actually we shouldn't be giving you a hard time. You survived 8 roundtables." And he says this is one of the longest runs in Traitors history. And I sort of thought, well, what history are you talking about? Are you talking about Traitors US history? Like, there's 3 seasons. That's hardly a lot big
Right.
record to go on. Are you
And
talking
the
about
first
all?
season, spoiler alert, the first season, the traitor made it the whole way.
Yeah. Yeah. So better
So,
than that. Yeah, it was just I'm like, oh, are you talking about all seasons internationally? Because I'm pretty
no.
sure that surviving 8 roundtables actually across all the seasons isn't that rare. So it's
Yeah,
just like a
no.
silly, like, I get it. I get saying that actually Danielle was the last
Mhm.
remaining traitor. Maybe there is
Yeah.
something to be commended there. But this sort of pretending like in all of Traitors history, just shut up.
I think it was mostly to try to defend against all the people, including us for the first half of the season, who were saying Danielle was a terrible traitor.
Mm,
Because a lot of the things, but that's their own fault because they showed the things that made Danielle appear to be a terrible traitor. And
yeah.
they didn't show the things that balanced it that made the players think, oh, she's not a traitor. And so as we sat here and went, how can they not see she's a traitor? We didn't see her social game, her
Yeah,
acting in that regard, the things that gain trust with people.
yeah, yeah,
And so it's their own fault that people thought she was a terrible traitor because they portrayed her that way.
yeah. I think so too, because by the the late stages of the game, I didn't really know that she was incredibly close to Dylan and had formed this bond with him and Dolores, I guess. So if I had seen that earlier, like her deliberate attempts to create these bonds, maybe I would have been more impressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm impressed. Like, I can't deny she made it the furthest. She made it almost to the end. That is even though we saw her doing crazy things,
Yeah, I
somehow
mean,
she got away with it.
if it hadn't been for Brittany, she might have won.
Yeah. The whole again, we had a question about this from a listener on the previous episode. The whole mission with the urns and the riddles and the fact that she several times gave up the chance to have a shield.
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed that no one singled
Yeah,
that out. But she obviously was doing enough elsewhere to negate that. So, she's done she's covered up somehow.
right.
Next, we sort of go back to the winners and the winning moments. We just get a montage of their journeys. It's you know, it's funny because they start with Dylan and they focus on all of his correct votes along the way. That dies out because when it gets to Dolores, there are no like ingenious moments to show us. It's kind of just like generic fun moments of Dolores in the castle.
Yeah,
She says her game was to make herself indispensable to people. And for a moment, I thought, God, maybe she did have a plan. But
no.
then I think, that wasn't deliberate. You just were besties with one person who you didn't know was a traitor.
Right. Yeah. I mean, she says, and that I feel brought me to the end. I outgamed the gamers. And no, you got lucky. You were dragged along while not even realizing you were in a game. And it's like, now I posted this on Blue Sky and it was a huge hit. It was literally, I believe, my most liked post to date, which is funny because, and I'm not lying because we're not doing the game. The day before, I posted something during Survivor that had become my most liked post to date. And then this one surpassed it a day later. Just that's how much people are annoyed at Dolores and her
Yeah,
saying, I outgamed the gamers. You didn't outgame anybody.
yeah. And
All you did was get dragged along and your ass got lucky. And, I made myself indispensable to people. Yeah, you were indispensable because you were playing a brainless game and Danielle knew you would do whatever she told you to do. That's
yeah,
not making yourself indispensable. That's being useless. Well, no, being a tool is what she was.
yeah,
And then she got lucky because other people voted out Danielle. She didn't.
yeah,
Other people voted out Danielle and left her standing there holding a bag of money.
yeah, exactly. And I I believe that Dolores believes she played a game. Like she would say, yeah, I was indispensable. I made friends with
Mm-hmm.
people and I just kind of like stayed out of the game and I just voted in a way that didn't upset anyone and make me a target. But I think we would both argue that not playing the game isn't a strategy. Like that's not playing the game is not playing the game.
Right.
So, and she was just sort of removed from it all. She there's several things she said about, well, I didn't ever want to vote for a woman, and then I wanted to have throwaway votes or whatever. Like, well, that's again, you just got lucky. You so easily could have
Yes.
been murdered, or
Or yeah, I
banished.
mean, yeah, they wanted to take her to the end because she was, like I said, a tool. And I absolutely think she would have stood by Danielle at the very end and been shocked when she
Yeah,
lost.
yeah,
And then there's like one scene that was included. I think it was at the funeral thing where she said, "Traitors, you'd better kill me because I'm coming for you." She didn't come for anyone.
I know.
Seriously. She came for breakfast.
Yeah. Uh, she did, and she even says in the studio right after this montage that it was the best experience of her life. And I thought, I bet it was the best experience of your life. You didn't do anything and you won $50,000.
Yeah.
That would be the best experience of my life too. Um, Ivar also admits a bit annoying that he says playing the grey man gets you to the end, and I thought, well, at least he acknowledges it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I have to say, actually, towards the end, I do think Ivar did get involved with the game and was smart. I think a lot of the way he didn't have a clue and like he had never watched the show before, but actually, in the end, he had strategic chats with Dylan and. He
Yeah.
at round table actually was quite vocal in explaining why he suspected like
Yeah.
Danielle or
I suspect he picked it up sooner than we saw,
mm,
and perhaps was playing the gray man, like he said, because I don't think he just magically came into it suddenly at a couple episodes ago.
yeah,
I said he was playing the Columbo
Columbo, yeah,
strategy,
yeah, I guess he was.
and so now when did he start playing the Columbo strategy? That we don't know some of.
Yeah. And I'm going to say something that probably a lot of British viewers will be thinking that I think it will annoy a lot of people that
Never
someone of
stops me.
Ivar's status and privilege and relative wealth has gone on TV and won $50,000.
Mm.
I think that will bother people. Kind of bothers me. And I'm sure Ivar's a nice guy. He seems lovely, but I he he doesn't need this.
I know.
uh,
And, he even said, yeah, I've had a comfortable life, and I've
yeah,
enjoyed it.
yeah,
I mean, he wasn't hiding that, I'm royalty. I got born into it and I didn't have to do shit.
yeah.
I mean, he didn't quite say that, but it was sure implied. It would have annoyed me more if, someone like Dorinda had done it, $10 million net worth Dorinda,
Mm,
especially after seeing her behavior. But at least Ivar was, I mean, like, yeah, I don't understand why you still have royals there. I don't understand the point of it. I don't understand why, like, some people in the U.S. are all taken in by it. It's like we fought a whole revolution to get away from that. But then again, we're installing a new king now. So, but yeah, I could see them being upset. But how is he any different from a wealthy housewife when it comes down to it?
yeah. Once again, same.
Yeah.
So, Dylan, Dylan talks about being intimidated by all of these reality stars, and he says he wanted to be accepted by them more than anything.
Mhm.
Oh God, right, Dylan, Saint Dylan, fine. I mean, he's nice. I like him, but geez, Dylan, like we know you're nice. You don't need, you can just say like, "Oh my, I want all this money. It's amazing." Um, we're not gonna be annoyed at you. Well, maybe we would. Gabby talks a bit about the power of women sticking together, and it's like she has a lovely point. She wants to challenge the idea that women shouldn't be believed. I just thought it was quite funny to say that on a show where three of the traitors were women.
Yeah.
But a nice sentiment. Yes, Gabby, I'm in support of you.
Hmm.
And we finish with Alan back at the castle, and he tells us what we already knew, that there will be another season of Traitors US.
Yeah, but the
I,
thing is, normally this is where they say so apply, but of course we can't apply
yeah.
because it's only for their chosen people.
Yes. Which, unless they do what you've suggested many times, and I would love if they ran a second season
Hmm.
and it was like, non-celebrities in
Yeah.
summer and then celebrities in winter. Okay, we have got some more listener questions, I think. I have three questions, or at least three sets of questions. Do
Okay.
you have a
I have
couple of questions,
two.
David? Okay, I'll start us off. This is from Kimberly on YouTube, and this is one of the questions I alluded to earlier when we were saying that in the reunion.
I just realized I had a whole list of other questions that I forgot to put in my notes here. One, two, three, four, five. Oops. Yeah, I forgot to put all these in there. So if we have time, we may go
Yeah,
through some of these.
yeah, I think we
Because I was
definitely
like,
have
what?
time.
How do I have so few? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
great. We'll add them in.
yeah.
We were talking about how in the reunion we felt that often there was more to say from some of the contestants about their gameplay, particularly Dylan, and it felt like either he didn't answer the questions or it was cut off. And I said, oh, this is kind of connected to one of the questions.
Hmm.
So Kimberly on YouTube says, where do you think is the right balance between showing the discussing of the meta between contestants and in confessionals? For example, I'm confident that blank is a traitor, but I won't vote for them because it doesn't benefit me, or I'm going to vote for blank. I don't think they're a
Hmm.
traitor, but blah, blah, blah. I think Survivor and Big Brother fans would enjoy that discussion, but I don't think Bravo fans would. I know the UK versions have stayed away
Screw
from
the
it.
Bravo fans. Sorry.
I know the UK versions have stayed away from it as well, presumably because it's on the BBC and meant for a general audience. But I believe Canada and New Zealand do have discussions of it. What
Hmm.
are your thoughts? So yeah, should we see them discussing the meta behind the game now, especially now that we have had a few seasons and we know how it works?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's not surprising I would say that because, you know, like the question asked, the
You're a Survivor fan.
yeah, exactly. I think this was on YouTube. I think I may have responded to it on YouTube
Ah,
actually, but yeah, I absolutely think that they should show it more because I think it adds to the enjoyment of the game. Otherwise, you're just watching and being like, why did this person make this move? I don't understand. It makes no sense.
yeah,
But it does make sense if you show it. And this is a Peacock show. It's not a Bravo show. I mean, I know there's a lot of overlap, but show it. Show what people are actually doing.
yeah,
It's interesting.
yeah. I agree, and I think for the UK version, yes, I think that there is a very broad demographic who watch the show, and they want to keep it a relatively simple, light, entertaining. They maybe don't want to make it feel more complicated than it is. But I think as the seasons go on, the audience becomes incredibly familiar with the game. I think we
Hmm.
already are really familiar with the ins and outs of the game. We see it all the time on podcasts and um,
Now,
you know,
remember that the people who listen to podcasts and participate in discussions and stuff are a fairly small percent of the overall viewing audience. And so they don't cater to us. They cater to what they believe will get. Here I am explaining to the guy
sure.
who works in television. Um, but but I do wonder also for the UK if they're just scared of showing anything that seems strategic based on what has happened with strategic shows in the UK before.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've talked about this on the podcast
Hmm.
that there's a general trend in British audiences to not really like incredibly strategic players. We kind of like nice people doing nice things and karma, and the nice players winning the show and stuff like that. So yeah, maybe, but I agree with you that I would like to see more. I'm happy to see. I don't mind seeing players who understand the game and are really familiar
Right.
with it and are going to play it their own way and tell us, the audience, here's why I'm doing this, even though it
Yeah.
seems odd.
Like I would like to know, was Dylan playing or was Dylan fooled most of the time and suddenly realized it? Was Ivar playing or was he fooled most of the time and suddenly came out of it? These are things I'd like to know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Uh, David, you've got a question.
Yes, this is from Millennium Approach. If Rob hadn't taken out Bob the Drag Queen when he did, do you think either would have won? That conflict seems to have caused a chain reaction that eventually led to every trader's downfall. I don't think either of them would have won because they're both just too big of personalities. Even if they had not, clashed when they did, something was coming. There's just no way either of those two was going to win. I don't think.
Yeah, agreed. Bob had suspicion on him before Rob actively decided to turn on him. He'd received votes. People were, Dylan was on to Bob immediately. I know, and we know that as the game goes on, everyone seems to trust Dylan. They love him. They like his opinion. Bob would have, and yeah, Bob's so loud. He just draws attention to himself. Would have been gone. And I think Rob, like we talked about earlier, Rob has a reputation. Rob's a game player. Rob's the GOAT, etc. I think inevitably people would have become sus
Yeah,
and just get him out because we can't take the chance that he's fooling us all. So
yeah.
yeah, I don't think it would have. I don't think either of them would have won. I have a question from Terry on YouTube who says, how would you like future seasons to be cast with celebrities? Nikki had the highest social media following this season and arguably was the most famous to non-reality TV viewers. And I know people that know who Nikki is. I didn't know who she was, but
I
I know a
didn't
couple of
either.
people that were like, "Oh yeah," and she's on like a show with her
Hmm.
sister as a wrestler. So she obviously has a big name. Should social media followings be prioritized to try to attract a new audience, or should they continue as is? So I guess the question is like, do we just want to continue with Survivor, Big Brother, Bachelorette people, or
Hmm.
do we want different kinds of celebrities with maybe who are really big on social media and have a bigger draw outside of those worlds?
I I was in a debate with someone who said Danielle is clearly a bad trader and she has because she has the lowest social media following. And I was like, those two have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah,
He was like, well, that means lots of people don't like her. I'm like, no, it means she played Big Brother 20 years ago and hasn't really been on social media. One has nothing to do with the other. Um, and so, I mean, is there room for a Nikki type in the game? Sure. Bring on one or two people who have big social media followers if they're going to be interesting.
yeah,
I bet Sam has a big social media following. I have no idea, but I bet he does. Was he interesting? No. Did I find Nikki particularly interesting? No, not really. Um, so I don't think casting should be done solely based on that. It can be influencing, you
mm,
know, and this is something that I saw someone else talking about it. I think Mike Bloom posted about it. He podcasts for Rob has a podcast, writes for Parade, does a lot of different things. He said, it's an interesting game that kind of brought us a new type of reality show, and because it brought in people who watch The Housewives to watch a reality show. I mean,
yeah,
we wouldn't be having these arguments with people about whether it was right to do something in a game if we only had game loving people watching. It's clear that there's a new audience that has been brought in, which, whether we agree with those people or not, that is the goal of the people making the show, to bring in an audience
yeah,
and sell commercials, and subscriptions to Peacock and whatever else.
yeah,
Um, so it is clear, yes, they've brought in these people. They've made Survivor and Big Brother fans happy by bringing back some of these people who we hadn't seen in a long time, whether it was Parvati and Suri and, Tony, as long as he lasted, and Jeremy. And so Danielle is a perfect example. Yes, we just saw her on Reindeer Games, but people have wanted to see her play a real game like this for a while. So I think it can be a part of casting. Now, if it were up to me, would they have so many housewives? No. I don't think they add much to it,
mm,
other than perhaps viewing audience.
yeah,
And then you have to wonder, did the viewers stick around after almost all of them were immediately eliminated? I don't
yeah.
know. I didn't look at the ratings. I did not see what happened. Maybe they all stayed around for Dolores. Whoopee. But again, Dolores is another perfect example. Okay, she was a housewife of New Jersey. Maybe she was well known. She was a zero. She was a negative number for casting.
Yeah. I uh I agree, and yeah, I don't know if social media following is necessarily the most important thing. I think the most important thing is character, interesting personalities, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they do need to have an audience who is familiar with them.
Right.
I my wish going forward is just that the casting is broadened out to different kinds of celebrities. Like I would like to see sports people, TV hosts, comedians, actors, singers. So I think that would be fun to see celebrities from different worlds all come together, which is
Yeah,
probably what the I know I realize that also takes away a bit of the you're then not really watching gamers, and so that detracts something from the show.
that's part of it. But also, I think if you're watching, let's say, actors,
Yeah.
well, either you're getting D-list actors,
Well,
which was
yes.
like going back to the celebrity mole days. You're watching these people who you barely even know, or you're paying a high price for an actor that are they really worth it?
Yeah, this
You know,
is this is the main point. that a lot of people suggest to me they're who they would love to see on the show,
Mm-hmm.
and often they end up naming like big actors and really famous singers. And the problem with the Traitors is it's a show that's really unusual because it starts with 22 people. They
Mm-hmm.
cannot afford that's a lot of people to pay. They can't pay 22 big celebrities big wages.
Yeah.
So financially, that I think that has a big impact on the casting of these shows. Um, and it's also why The Traitors is difficult to make. The reason it's co-produced by two different companies is because these days one company couldn't take on the financial
Yeah.
burden of that. Like TV is just the world of TV is changing. There's so much less money in it. So much broadcasters and streamers are so much less willing to take risks. So The Traitors is made by NBC and Studio Lambert together
Mm-hmm.
to save each of them money. And yeah, they can't afford to pay like Nicole Kidman's not going to come on and do The Traitors.
Right. And the thing is, even if you think they pay each of them $10,000 as an appearance fee,
Yeah,
which I think is probably on the low end overall, that's still more than the prize money
yeah,
they have laid out there.
yeah,
And like I said, I think that's on the low end. Like Survivor, they used to pay the players $10,000 just to come for the reunion show.
yeah.
And so who knows if they get paid for this reunion show as well. Or,
From what I know, I think they get paid an extra to do this. Well,
yeah,
that was certainly the way in season one.
yeah. So, they're not going to be able to meet the requirements of certain actors
Yeah, yeah.
or others.
David, your
Okay.
next
So,
question.
yes, Giovanni, returning questioner, asks, does Dylan Efron have the best social game out of the Faithfuls in all three seasons? I'm not the I'm not the trivia guy. Do I remember all of the Faithfuls in the first two seasons? No, but I think Dylan may have the best social game out of everyone. He was in the pocket of two different traders and beloved by a bunch of the Faithfuls. So actually, three different traders because add Rob in there. So yeah, yeah, I'm gonna say yes without going through every single faithful in every single season. I'm gonna say yeah, he probably does have the best social game out of the faithfuls.
Yeah. Did the question stipulate it was faithful or just players in general?
Faithfuls,
Oh, faithful. Okay. If it was players in general, I can think of some traitors who had an amazing social game,
like
and
the
that's why they
winner of
won.
season one,
Yeah,
perhaps. Yes.
that's where my mind went. But
Yeah.
Dylan, yeah, probably, yeah. It seems like
Yeah.
he was universally loved among the
Mm-hmm.
cast. It could have caused him a problem because he nearly got murdered. Somehow it
Right.
evaded it, but like you said, maybe it's because he got close to traitors, knowingly or not. He Everyone trusted
Mm-hmm.
him, believed him, liked him, wanted him around. He was seen as a nice guy, and he won, so it worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
My next question is from Stephen. This is Stephen, who has been on the podcast before. Hi, Stephen. This is sort of about the production of the show, and this this is not a spoiler. Listeners, please don't get mad. I'm going to refer to the UK version. This reveals nothing of importance. It's not going to spoil anything. It says, Stephen says some of the US challenges have been simplified or changed for the US players from the UK versions of the same challenges. The US production values often seem like they've been turned up to 11 compared to the UK version, or am I imagining that? What do you and David think of the US season's production values, directing, editing, as compared to UK or other versions of the show? Are any of these significantly different? Um, I find it really difficult to answer this. One thing I will say is, and Stephen actually asked in his email, he said, "Oh, I don't know if it's the same crew that work on the show. It is the same crew, um, which I suspected, but now I know for sure from through work, speaking to people. I worked with a couple of people who worked on the Tracers, and they worked with the US celebrities. They were
Mm-hmm.
talking a little bit about Parvati and Kate coming for their visit. So it's the same. It's a UK crew that Studio Lambert hire, and they do both seasons. So it's the same people making the show.
Mm-hmm.
The only to answer Stephen's question, I don't know if I see much of a difference. I think maybe we're influenced by the fact that they're celebrities and they have like really expensive clothes and they look their best, and Alan is so flamboyant. Maybe the costume is different. I don't.
Well, Alan is so flamboyant, and I would say Claudia dresses the most conservatively of any English speaking host.
Yeah,
Every
yeah,
other host tries to really dress up. And
yeah,
I think, Claudia's out there in a turtleneck sweater.
yeah, exactly. So I think that plays a big part in that illusion. The
Yeah.
costume, the wardrobe. Other than that, I don't really notice much of a difference. Other than that, subliminally, I think, oh, it's famous people. It's a bit more glamorous. I don't.
Mhm.
I don't know if it really is. Um, Apart from the crew being the same, I guess there's a difference because for the US version, NBC or Peacock will have more say on what they want shown in their episodes, whereas the UK version, BBC
Mhm.
will have a slightly different angle they want to go for
Right.
and a different um, look or a different feeling to the episode. So the channels have their own input into how things turn out, but I don't notice a huge difference to answer Stephen's question.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Uh, I think I have no more questions, but I think you still
Okay,
have a
so
few, David.
yeah, let's try a rapid answer on this. Since sorry to these people, they came in a little later. I put them on my phone and forgot to transfer them to my notes. So, Gary, did Danielle tank Brittany's game? And I think we went over this a lot. I think it was the opposite. Brittany tanked Danielle's game.
Uh, yeah, I don't think because yeah, Danielle's plan was to get to the end. Whether she
Right,
was going to share with her at the end, who knows?
right.
But yeah, her I don't think she wavered from her plan to get her there, and I don't think she did anything to. All of the reason that Brittany got. Oh, does the question mean because of the way she went out and didn't
I,
say thank you? Maybe
oh,
I think that
that could be. I didn't think about that part.
I don't think that was the nail in the coffin. I think Brittany was probably going to go anyway.
Well, that relates to the next question, which is from Amanda. Do you think a rule should be made for when traders are banished and what they say
Hmm.
as they leave? It seems as if whenever a trader is banished, they say something to target the other traders. Just wondering your thoughts. Love the podcast. So thank you, Amanda. Um, there are rules,
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
and a lot of people push those up to the boundaries. I think that the traders already have an advantage in this game. And so anything that helps the faithful even a little bit, I don't mind that
Yeah.
to even things out. I mean, in this case, it's like um, what they say as they leave. Well, what would Danielle have said that would have been different? She just didn't say something nice about Brittany
Yeah.
when she left. So I don't even know how that would, fall into it.
Yeah. It's tough. We talked about it on the finale
Right.
episode. There will be rules in place. The production will grill
Mm-hmm.
the contestants. Here's what you can and can't say when you leave. Traitors, you cannot do this. You cannot imply this. You cannot
Right.
give hand motions. You cannot deliberately.
Yeah.
But it's still a grey area. There's still things that are very
Mm-hmm.
subjective. Danielle could quite easily, if she was questioned afterwards, hey, that you made that too obvious, she could just say, well, even if I was a faithful, I'd be annoyed at her.
Right.
She turned on me after Big Brother Reindeer Gate, so that's not. I
Yeah.
didn't say that because I'm a traitor. I said that because she pissed me
Right.
off.
Yeah.
So there's yeah, it's just a sort of issue that will continue to happen, and there's only so much that they can do to
Right.
stop it,
Right.
except slap conditions on their contracts and all that.
Yeah. Alan Robert said, out of the non-gamers this season of Traders, this part's directed to me. Who would you like to see on Survivor? I'd like to see Dylan on Survivor. Let's see if he can play a game. Out of everyone else, I think it would be funny to see Ivar on Survivor, but I don't think it would happen. Maybe Gabby, but anyone else, I can't really think of. Matthew, since you haven't seen Taskmaster, which Drag Race UK queen would you like to see on Traitors US as the token Brit? Now, Alan said he may have sent this to you as well, but he reframed it. So
Yes. He sent it to me task with Taskmaster, and I said actually I've never really properly watched it.
okay,
Drag Race UK. There's kind of one very obvious answer that springs to mind, and it is Lawrence Chaney. And I'm saying Lawrence Chaney for a very obvious reason. Lawrence is Scottish, is from Glasgow. On the current season of Drag Race that's on right now, Lawrence came back and did a little cameo and made a joke about the traitors. And he did a little bit all about how they were going to have to murder someone wearing, and Lawrence was wearing tartan. So there was a funny little crossover there. So it just makes sense for Lawrence, the Scottish, and who won like season two of Drag Race UK and is doing really well out of it. It would make so much sense for Lawrence to join the castle in native Scotland. And Lawrence is really funny as well, really like comedic, does great stand up and all that. So would be good fun and I think not quite as overbearing as Bob.
All right. Kataturi asks, having seen the seer in two different seasons, is there another device from Mafia or Werewolf, BOTC, oh, Blood on the Clock Tower, etc., that you'd prefer in place of it? I think we talked about this before. I wouldn't mind seeing a doctor
Yeah.
role. I think it would be interesting. Other than that, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know all the games that well. I know
Yeah.
Werewolf, and yeah, they have a similar. It's either the Doctor or the Alchemist or
Hmm.
something like that. Yeah, yeah, maybe someone who it's like an extra shield. Someone is protecting one player each
Right.
night in secret. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that happening. Again, it would have to be that person would have to be given the role in secret, I think, to make
Yes.
it not like what's happening with the
Right.
seer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the only one that I can think of off the top of my head. Part of the reason is when I play Mafia, there are a lot of made up roles. Like the person who runs the Mafia game has made up roles, some of which are named after Survivor players. So if I start naming them, people are just going to be like, "What are you talking about? You want the Eliza Orlins in there? What does that even mean?" You know. And last one, Shanner asks, which Traders in Plain Sight task did you like better and why? The picking of the players for the death match or the coffin task in the US version?
We're talking a little bit about UK here, are we?
Oh, yeah, it sounds that way.
Okay.
So, spoiler alert,
Spoiler,
everyone.
if you don't want to know about UK, miss that, skip ahead this part, right? Um, I preferred the UK one. I thought it was more exciting. Um, I, we talked about it on the pod, but this sort of walking up the aisle to confront the person, it's fine. It was just so produced and so sort
Hmm.
of fake with them like giving their speeches to no one. I thought the different version that we've seen in UK was more it ended up being more exciting and more tense.
Yeah, I think I agree with that without going into any more spoilerish detail.
That's just reminded me though. I was gonna one of my lies that I forgot to use in the previous episode. I was gonna lie about the painting from the UK version. I was gonna say, "Oh, David, did you notice the painting was still hanging on the wall
Yeah,
in the US version?" When I
I
had
think I might have
noticed that
caught
it was
on to that
different.
one. That I might have caught on to. So,
Uh, okay, I think that's the end of our questions,
yeah.
and I enjoyed answering those questions much more than I enjoyed talking about the actual reunion.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a final thought as we're moving into here, but I I really didn't enjoy this reunion very much. I kind of
Yeah.
telegraphed that at the beginning. I I love the idea of a reunion. I think it's great. I would love it on other seasons. And I may have said this at the beginning. That was so long ago now I don't remember. But this was put together by the Bravo people trying to create drama in a cringy way, and it just wasn't enjoyable. The first two had some dumb fights from faithfuls being upset about how people acted. And yeah, we didn't have that this time. I was expecting, I think I mentioned, I was expecting people to jump down Danielle's throat about swearing on her grandkids. But even so, I just didn't feel like it was fun.
Yeah.
It was boom, 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 jumping around. Someone commented on one of my videos and said, I wish we could have the producers of this do the Survivor reunion.
Mm.
Why? This wasn't fun. So, yeah, I just, I think this was the worst of the reunions. Um, and that doesn't mean I want them to somehow find a way to find more drama. No, how about answering the questions that we actually want to know about, not whatever random thing pops into Andy's head or social media feed. I mean, I saw on Threads there were like just when I saw there were like over 900 responses just on Threads to Andy saying, "What questions should I ask?" And
Yeah.
these were the ones we ended up with. There had to be better ones.
Yeah. I agree. It's the social media questions they answered didn't seem particularly exciting. Like we get great questions, so I love all the questions that people send
Mm-hmm.
us. They're really interesting, but these just were seemed. I just don't know what the point was. Like just have producers or someone who watched the show and know it ask like what the really
Right.
important questions are to get more
Yeah.
interest in.
Dylan, did you know what you were doing? The show's over now. You can find Dylan. You can make Dylan or get Dylan to admit if he knew what he was doing. Ivar, when did you realize what game you were playing?
Yeah. The
You know?
yeah, I felt like the reunion didn't change my mind about anything. It didn't give me much more insight into anything. I was interested.
Literally, okay, literally just now, just this second, as we're recording, a notification popped up and someone saying the reunion was so good. Literally, I mean, you'd think this was my lie
Well,
if we were playing the game, but
yeah,
it literally just popped up on my watch and on my phone. I'm like, are you listening to us? Because no, it wasn't.
yeah. I guess different people like different things. But
I
David and I,
guess.
separately came to the conclusion that we did not. As soon as I came
Yeah.
on today to talk to David before we were recording, I was like, man, that was boring. We instantly that was my thought.
And
Um,
I said, yeah, I thought so too. I just didn't want to tell you ahead of time to skew your view.
yeah. I, the one thing that I really wanted was to see the fallout, I guess, from Brittany and Danielle. That bit, and it got a little bit of time.
Yeah, and then
I
we
could have
found
done with
out,
it.
like I saw an interview with Brittany where where the interviewer said, "How are you guys now?" And Brittany's like, "Well, we talked afterwards, and I think we're in a good place." That's what we want to see.
Yeah,
We want to see what actually happened. Instead, no, we have to cut to something else so that someone can argue about something stupid.
yeah, or yeah, we go over like, oh, remember you said this funny thing that one episode? Ha ha ha.
Yeah,
Let's watch Tom singing backwards for 30 seconds.
yeah.
Like, yeah,
Again,
it was fun at the time, but I don't care about it now.
yeah, you could check out my YouTube shorts for that.
Exactly. I wish I had seen more of Carolyn. I feel like she's the sort of like standout of the season almost. She's sort of the one that I think the audience got behind, and she's like the fan favorite. Favorite. If there was a Miss Congeniality, like she would be the
Mm.
winner. So I thought, well, she's the interesting one. She's fun. Like, give us more of Carolyn, and don't really get that much of Carolyn.
No.
Instead, we get Ayan walking across the stage, shouting at Bob the drag queen about her outfit. Like, I don't. You weren't in the game. I don't care about you now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Didn't care about you before. I mean, like I said, for the few minutes she was in there, I thought she was amusing.
Yeah.
Okay, that was it. Now I think you're less amusing. Now I think you're just bitter.
Yeah. So, those are our final thoughts.
Yeah, the
Uh,
one other thing that I had is I wanted to mention I have seen people claiming for weeks that they knew Danielle and Brittany would win. Like I think I might have mentioned
oh yeah,
well
you did,
that
yeah.
someone posted. I think this may have been offline that someone posted in one of my videos. Danielle and Brittany win, and someone else responded and said, "Hello, spoiler." And I responded and I said, "I if I thought that was a spoiler, I would have deleted the comment." I think it's just them insisting on it.
Mm.
And, but as many people as were insisting, I was like, did I miss something by not being on Twitter? Is there a spoiler going around that I'm not aware of? And so, all you people who were absolutely insisting that they knew Danielle and Brittany would win,
Yeah.
nope.
Haha. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say, haha, I wish they, I mean, I would have liked to see them win, but don't act like you absolutely know something is going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I on the other end of that, I had a funny message on I think YouTube today saying, "Hey Matthew, don't know if you've watched the finale yet, but the one thing you were absolutely certain about, you were completely wrong, and I just
Yeah.
have to put my hands up and go, yeah, I got it so wrong about
I mean, same
Brittany.
here. I was certain that she would not. But those are predictions on specific actions,
Yeah,
and we know that we can be wrong. The people who are out there, we know Brittany and Danielle will win. Like I said, it was they were starting to convince me that I had missed a spoiler.
yeah, yeah. It's done. It felt like a long season actually. I mean, I guess it because they do one episode a week, it's so different to the UK, which is it's quite compressed. So
It's much
we
nicer this way.
yeah, it's easier to podcast about and then talk to people online and
Hmm.
share thoughts and theories. There's not so much time when it's
I mean,
UK one night
imagine
after
that.
the other.
Yeah, imagine that cliffhanger, the Brittany voting Danielle out cliffhanger on the UK. It would have literally been cliffhanger. Switch to the next episode. Okay, cliffhanger resolved.
Yeah.
There would have been no discussion about it whatsoever.
Well, you did get 24 hours. They would wait. They didn't drop them all immediately. So you have a day to think about it.
I
They
thought they
drop
dropped. I thought,
they
well, they were doing some weird thing where they dropped Wednesdays and Thursdays and then Fridays.
they only did that the first week, strangely. I
Okay.
think to hook people in. After that, you did have to wait until the next night.
Oh,
So
okay.
you got a day of a cliffhanger.
Okay.
But yeah, it's I'm happy for them to be spread out. So I we've got just a few things to wrap up. I mentioned this on the last episode, but in case you weren't listening or have forgotten, Traitors will be on a bit of a break for a while. There's not much coming till the end of the year, I don't think. So it would be nice for the podcast to do a little bit more. I'm planning to cover one of the international, non-English versions of the Traitors, but there are so many of them, I cannot do all of them. I will not do all of them. But there must be some that are universally seen as excellent seasons that I must watch. People often say, "Oh, Matthew, watch this one, watch that one." It'd be good to sort of make a decision, collate that. So if you have watched any non-English speaking versions and you think I ought to cover it on the podcast, uh, send me a message. You can do that on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at
Presuming they have captions.
with subtitles, ideally, yes. Or unless you want to like translate down the phone to me, but that's
Oh,
tricky.
gosh.
So subtitles would be great.
Can only
You
imagine doing
can,
that
and
one.
I have rudimentary French. It's not enough to get me by a whole season. You can contact me with your thoughts, your recommendations on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the Trade Hour Podcast. You can leave comments on those places. Again, now, we're not going to talk about it in the podcast because we're finished for now, but you can talk to other listeners about it.
Hmm.
And I will try and respond to you myself. And you can email me at thetradehourpodcast@gmail.com. David, tell us where we can find you online.
Well, I am all over social media and somewhat reality TV podcasting. I am back podcasting about U.S. Survivor on the Rob Has a Podcast Network. With the name of the show being Why Blank Lost, you can go to weknowsurvivor.com and find it easily that way, along with all the other ones that they have. We recorded our second episode for the season yesterday, and it is already out there posted by the time you hear this. Separately, I have been posting an average, Matthew, an average of at least usually four, sometimes more reality TV short videos per day on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram as at David Bloomberg TV. Right now, they are, of course, a mixture of the Traitors US, a few more of those, mostly slamming Dolores. U.S. Survivor, Australian Survivor, Deal or No Deal Island, Extracted, and The Amazing Race. There's a lot going on there. I sometimes I can't even keep up. So, and then if you want to keep up, though, you can find all my various accounts at Linktree/David Bloomberg. The URL for Linktree has a dot before the EE in there. You can find me directly on Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg, and I of course encourage everyone to come over to Blue Sky.
Great. And if you've been listening all season, thank you so much. If you wanted to um, show a bit of support for the podcast, you could visit the coffee.com page. That's ko-fi.com/Matthew Keeley. That link is in the episode description. And I thanked them last episode, but I'm going to thank them again. In the past week, Stephen, Angus, Ollie, Alice, Nate, and Steph all sent in really kind donations to help keep the podcast going. So thank you so much. And to everybody who's donated all across the season, that's been really, really supportive. I appreciate it. David, thanks for a great season. It's been a pleasure. I know you are
Yes.
busy with all other content and shows that you're covering, so I appreciate you joining me for the Trader, and I know the listeners do too. Hope you've enjoyed this season.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me this outlet because otherwise, I might explode. If I had to keep all my thoughts about Dolores just in my head, I don't know what would happen. So, so yes, it's been a lot of fun.
Great. And I know you'll be back at some point, I'm sure.
Yes.
Uh, and again, just a final thank you for all the listeners. It's the last couple of months it's been a lot for the podcast. I've pretty much been podcasting at least once every week, sometimes three times, even four times a week since the beginning of January, doing UK traders, US traders. David helped me out an awful lot with that too. And it was brand new this year to do a visual podcast for YouTube. So I had to sort of quickly figure all that out at the same time. But you've been listening faithfully. The podcast is growing and growing on social media and in listenership. Fantastic. I hope you'll join us for whatever we move on to cover next. And at the very least, I'll be back later in the year for more traitors. So until whenever that may be, keep us on your radar.
And stay traitorous.